this evening to see this great presentation. First off, I'd like to welcome you all to New Jersey Audubon's 48th Cape May Spring Festival. So, welcome everyone. Anybody see some birds today? Anybody have a favorite bird? Shout it out. What was it? A beautiful indigo bunting.
Oh, yeah.
Yellow-throated warbler.
Swallowtail kite.
Swallowtail kite. Yeah, I want to see hands here. How many people got to see a swallowtail kite today? Very nice. Very nice. That's awesome. There have probably been now 14 records or so this spring of swallowtail, which may be the most ever. I'm not sure. I'd have to check that. I've gotten 1 second glimpses at 2 of them. And that's with a lot of effort, so congratulations on getting to see that. Anybody have a favorite location you went to? Which beach? Cook's Beach, yeah, it's hard to beat the shore, but hey, we got just the right people to talk about that tonight. Any other place? Garrett? The Back Bay? Yeah, on the Osprey? So, all right. Couple things I need to point out. First off, your efforts. We are now up to at least 165 species as a group for the festival, so give yourself a round of applause. I'm very proud to say that Team Brett won the Dash to 100. Not to rub it into Team Tom, but with 105 species. But combined, the two teams hit 124 species, so it was a wonderful day, and thank you for the participants that made it so much fun. Now switching over to the festival, how many people are here for the first time for Cape May Festival? Quite a few. That is great to see, so welcome. I hope you're enjoying Cape May and you will be back. How many people have been here 5 or more times? Again, quite a few hands, so thank you for your continued support. You're the reason we do this. Overall, we have 366 registrants for the festival this spring from 31 different states and the UK. So, yeah, that's awesome. Of course, I have a few thank yous to go around before we get started. First off, I want to thank our event sponsor, Zeiss Optics. Incredible sponsor for many years for New Jersey Audubon. I hope you have enjoyed, those of you who were able to borrow some of the Zeiss loaners out of the Wicker Room, I hope you enjoyed those. I want to thank the Grand Hotel for hosting us, as they often do. Everyone who donated items or accommodations to the sweepstakes, and I'll get to the ending on that in a minute. But especially the Grand Hotel, who is the anchor accommodation for that, and as well as the Zeiss for donating a couple of pairs of terrace to the winner. The bonus for registrants ends tonight, so you'll get 25% more chances to win if you buy tickets before midnight tonight. The entire sweepstake ends at midnight tomorrow night. So get your tickets before it's too late. A special thanks to those who offered indoor programs and lectures, and then those who led the Leader's Choice and Taste of the Bayshore trips. Bob Lubberman and the Osprey for heading up the Back Bay and the kayaking trips, and the Whale Watch and Research Center for the trip to the Rips happening tomorrow, which should be a lot of fun. Of course, New Jersey Audubon can't do this event without the support of the staff, with many colleagues from finance, stewardship, research, education, and development. The staff at CMBO that makes the magic happen. Del Schwader, our program coordinator, she's here somewhere. Tom Reed, our migration coordinator, accounting. Our senior naturalist, Scott Barnes. I don't know that Scott's here this evening. And of course, our cadre of store associates. You'll meet Brian Moscatello out there selling all the books. And of course, the stars of our special events director, Lillian Armstrong, and events assistant, Shannon D'Angelo. So those people can stand up and be recognized. Shannon's way in the back there. Thank you. And then, of course, we can't do this without our volunteers and our naturalists, and we are so fortunate to have such an incredibly talented and welcoming group. So I would please like any of those trip leaders or volunteers in the working room, please stand up and be recognized. And then lastly, I want to thank you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for making these events so much fun. Thank you for taking what you learned here back home with you to those 31 states in the UK. Carry the message forward and make it count. And without further ado, I am going to pass it off to New Jersey Audubon's President and CEO, Alex Ireland.
All right, can you all hear me? Cool. All right, I'll start again by thanking Zeiss. Again, this is an incredible event. It's big, it's difficult to put on, and their sponsorship helps us tremendously. So thank you again, Zeiss. And I love hearing those stories about the birds that we all got on today. I had the great experience of being out there and spending time with all of you, and the birds are the stars. But I have to be honest, the spark moment for me is being out there with everyone engaged together. Helping someone get on a bird, being helped to get on a bird, seeing the joy in each other's faces as we have that experience together, those are the things that I think we take with us. That's what I want to teach to kids. That's what I want to walk away with, so that each and every one of us goes back to our own home, works even harder on our own habitat, and drives conservation forward. So it's the connectivity that matters so much, and I thank you all for being a tremendous part of that. All right, so those of you who have seen me speak before, I usually wave around a piece of paper in my hand and I never look at it, but tonight I have the tremendous, honor, humbling task of inviting and introducing two tremendous gentlemen. So I do indeed have to read to do justice. Kevin Carlson and Pete Dunn, in the short years that I have known you, you have been tremendous influences on me. So let's start with Kevin. Kevin is an accomplished birder, author, professional tour leader, and wildlife photographer. He's a regular at bird and nature festivals around North America, where he delivers keynote presentations, workshops, identification schools, photo guides, and just inspires people to get out there and to really feel it. That's what Kevin does with me. Every time I talk with him, I feel it, and I feel it differently. Beyond that, he's the author of many, many important publications, including the Shorebird Guide, Birding by Impression, a different approach to bird identification, Birds of Prey with Pete Dunn, and a set of other books with Pete Dunn. I could read them on and on and on, and they're all wonderful. Tonight, we're going to hear a little bit from their new publication, A Natural History and Photograph. I'm sorry, I stopped in the wrong place. The Shorebirds of North America, A Natural History and Photographic Celebration. It is an immensely approachable piece of work. I hear that it has some of the most beautiful photographs ever captured in the world, and we're going to get to hear from these two gentlemen. Pete Dunn. Who here has not heard of Pete Dunn? I am told that Pete Dunn started birding at the age of 7 to get away from adults. And that ploy worked for a little while, until the 1970s, when the growing enthusiasm for birding as an activity created a bit of a tribal leader role for Pete. Pete's acumen and enthusiasm for hawk watching brought him to the newly emerged Cape May Bird Observatory in 1976. He started as a hawk watcher. By 1978, he was running the place, and he spent 29 years with an incredible, amazing career as the director of New Jersey Audubon's Cape May Bird Observatory. Pete has published over 20 books on birding, penned in numerous essays. Now at the age of 73, he and his wife Linda balance their time between Mauricetown, New Jersey, California, and Maine. He continues to write, he continues to inspire, and I cannot wait to hear these two wonderful gentlemen share their expertise, their wisdom, and their spirit with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. You know, New Jersey Audubon has been fortunate to have, in my life, three incredible directors, executive directors, starting with Tom Gilmore. If those of you knew Tom, you know what an incredible man he was, turning this organization around in early 1980s, and then Eric Stiles. And believe me, this young man over here is something to be proud of and thankful that he's got the reins for you guys and for the organization, because he will do great things. He's already doing great things. So what I want to start with is, as I'm opening up this to get ready to do the show, my wife Gail Russell, who's somewhere in the crowd, sitting next to my former yoga teacher, Phyllis Schlegel, and her husband Howard, who was the director of the Cape May National Wildlife Refuge for decades. They're very good friends. As a proud member of the community, it's important that, let me get this started, and once this is on, we're good to go. Here we go. All right, that's the cover of the book. The community has been wonderful. It's changed so much, Cape May County, since 1983 when we first came down here. But in the early 90s, I met a gentleman who's probably one of the bulwarks of this community, and he's basically, if you want a dedication, or if you want some money to help your organization, Bob Smeltzer will come through with it. And so I invited Bob and Suzanne, who's sitting in the front row here. In 30 years, we've been dear friends. During my cancer, tough one. This man helped me through it all 3 years ago, and helped me survive and helped me go back to where I am today. So thank you, Bob. I'm honored to call you my friends. And you know what? The participants that make this festival what it is. Pete and I could come up here and talk to an empty audience and it wouldn't matter. But you guys are really what make the festival what it is. And there's one gentleman, Steve Saunders from Vermont, that never misses this spring festival. His daughter Claire is here this time as well. And Steve, it's you and everybody else here that make this festival what it is. So thank you all for coming and for being here. And I just want to give one last little tip. In my life, there's been one person that has influenced me more in the world of birds, a short 47 years worth, and that's Pete Dunn. The greatest speaker I've ever seen, one of the greatest writers. You know, I used to edit Pete's work and I'd be constantly crossing out sentences and taking words out, saying, "You can't do that, Pete." And then I saw the special on Ernest Hemingway on Ken Burns, and he put up a page from The Sun Also Rises, and I said, "My God, that's Pete." And I mentioned it to Pete. He said, "Well, he was my greatest influence." So I told the editor of this book, the copy editor, I said, when you see Pete's writing and you want to change his, don't. Let it go. So Pete's writing really came back to flourish in this book. So, you know, I think I've praised Pete enough. He doesn't like praise. But, you know, 1977, he came down, our first hawk watcher. Next year will be bird observatory. Yeah. This guy was responsible for starting the World Series of Birding and many other innovative programs that helped elevate New Jersey Audubon Society to great, particularly Cape May Bird Observatory, to great heights. So, but with that said, I'm going to turn the mic over to Pete, and he wants to tell you a little bit. I'm going to get through the early part of the show. I'm going to note the time. Okay, we're starting at 6:15. I took excerpts of the book to put into this program. I've done the program 5 times. Pete's never seen it. But he said to me the other night, he says, "Listen, I'd rather you read it, so I'm going to do my best, my best Pete Dunn impression, which is going to be not up to par." But Pete wants to give you a few words before we start. So Peter, you good with this mic? This one? Yeah, that's a good one. Test. Perfect. Here you go, Pete.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Back at you. Hi, I'm going to work on back. you are in for a visual treat tonight. I mean, just look at the cover of that book. You can learn a lot about a book by looking at the cover, but you can't see the backstory. So I thought that with the time that I have, that I would give you a little bit of backstory to the writing of this book. I mean, when you look at it, you can't see the thousands of hours that this man put into photographing the birds to make this the most visually engaging shorebird book on the planet. Nor can you see the hundreds of hours that Kevin spends in the Lightroom photoshopping these images to a sharp-edged luster. And the cover says nothing about the scores of meetings we had where we discussed content and photo placement, and to that Kevin deserves a great deal of credit, because not only is he an expert photographer, but he's also a very accomplished design artist. Now, if you take a look at that cover, you'll note that it reads Pete Dunn and Kevin T. Carlson. Well, I'm here to tell you this is Kevin's book. We discussed putting Kevin as first author, but Kevin being the modest person he is, and also being conscious of our branding, because all of our previous books were Dunn and Carlson, said, you know, we really can't change it. You know, it's like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. It's never Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. It's always Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. So I am delighted to be sharing the podium tonight with my friend, colleague, co-author, shorebird expert, and accomplished photographer, Dean Martin.
Okay, I don't seem to be in slideshow mode here, but I'll find out pretty soon. Okay, we're going to get going. You know, let me move Pete's notes out of the way. This whole first section, which is scripted, I'm not going to ad-lib at all, which is a miracle for me. But if you want to turn the lights down slightly up here, just a little bit, John, I'll let you know. No, I don't need that one. Oh, okay, yeah. All right, we're good. Thank you. All right. I put these in. This is a book that when Robert Kirk at Princeton University Press came up to Pete a few years ago, he said, I'd like you to try to emulate this great book that was done in 1968. Went out of print immediately, but it was the reason why Princeton approached us to do this book. And I, of course, the author of this book, the ID guide, the Shorebird Guide. So I'm going to go through these. I was planning on going through images while Pete spoke, but that's not the case. These are just some images that didn't make it into the show. And we're going to go through them real quick. Some of them are absolutely stunning. What's that shorebird doing in a tree? You'll find out in a little while. And this is the island. Those of you who are with me today at Cook's Beach, this is the island that's usually covered with so many shorebirds. Today covered with like 1 million gulls. Okay, here we go. Everything about shorebirds is remarkable, from their ability to hide in plain sight to their hemisphere vaulting migrations. Challenged to design the perfect bird, this is Pete's words, we would without hesitancy delve into the ranks of shorebirds and reach down to the sandpipers, the largest of the roughly 6 or 7 family groups in the shorebird order Charadoriformes. Choosing any one of North America's 37 regular breeding sandpipers, it's doubtful we could contrive any refinements that would enhance their array of superior attributes. With their long legs and splayed toes, shorebirds are ideally suited to exploit the food riches that flourish where land and water meet. Their extraordinary powers of flight, this is the Hudsonian godwit, permit some of them to vault entire hemispheres in a single bound, placing seasonal food abundance at opposite ends of the earth within reach of their tweezer-like bills. Designed with football-shaped bodies and scimitar-like wings, few bird families can match the speed of shorebirds, and no other bird group can equal their non-stop migrations. While gulls, terns, and auks are also included in the order, the same order, these bird families are not typically referenced as shorebirds, a designation reserved for the roughly 56 species of shorebirds that breed or regularly occur in North America. These are divided into 5 closely related bird groups. The oystercatchers, this is of course a black oystercatcher from out west. Stilts and avocets in the same photo. Jacanas, plovers, and there you see the black-bellied plover with the semi-palmatus that we had at Heislerville yesterday. And jacanas, they've only bred in Texas a couple of times. It's a tropical species, but you know, they're here. And of course, sandpipers. Throughout the rest of the world, however, shorebirds are referred to as waders. It's only in North America that we call them shorebirds. We like to do things our own way, don't we, in North America, especially the United States. As for staying power, shorebirds have long stood the test of time. Proto-shorebirds with sandpiper or plover-like feet were foraging stride for stride beside their non-avian dinosaur relatives along ancient lake shores during the early Cretaceous period, 145 to 65 million years ago. The proof is etched in tracks preserved in a 122 million year old rock. These non-feathered members of the dinosaur family tree reside in museum specimens today, but the planet's ever-changing 217 of shorebird species endure. This is the first feathered dinosaur. This is Archaeopteryx. This also occurred about 150 million years ago. Suddenly, feathers appeared. Now, evolution in bird species can take eons, and this one did. And then they realized this is a warm-blooded animal. It's no longer cold-blooded, this Archaeopteryx. I mean, books have been written about it. It's just an absolute, so this is our first bird. That's how far back they go. And anyone who doubts the evolutionary link between birds and dinosaurs has never watched a black-bellied plover forage across a tidal flat. As sight and sensory hunters propelled by strong legs that permit rapid acceleration, these dedicated carnivores with bullet-shaped bills feed voraciously on marine worms, secured after a calculated stop-and-go approach, a short dash, and a one-sided tug-of-war. This is a beautiful shot that my friend Audubon took that I included in the book. This marbled godwit went way down under the water to find this lugworm. And as it was pulling it out of the water, the black-bellied decided, I can snatch that from its bill. And of course it did, and the marbled godwit just had to watch helplessly as it flew off with a heck of a meal. With their large heads and quasi-upright stances, these king plovers, the term Pete coined for the book, even somewhat resemble Tyrannosaurus rex. Wow. You gotta have a little imagination, come on. Arguably the most formidable predator ever to stalk the earth. While mostly solitary, as befits top-tier predators, black-bellied plovers may gather during migration in loose flocks of up to 100 birds to forage on beaches or freshly plowed, worm-rich agricultural fields. While primarily visual feeders, and this is a golden juvenile, every now and then you'll get one that looks like a golden plover, but it's just the plumage that's got golden tones to it. Plovers also locate under and around worms by feeling their slight motion with the sensitive soles of their feet. So if you've ever watched an American robin on your lawn feeding, you might say to yourself, maybe you didn't, maybe you just take it for granted, they're good at finding worms that are not on the surface of the ground. When they step, they're feeling with the sensitive soles of their feet, and they feel the vibration of the worm retracting. They'll stare at the ground, they'll reach down, and they'll pull it out of the ground. So next time you see the robin, understand that it's not just the food isn't just giving it up, it's earning the food. And all plovers feed like that, like American robins, or the other way around. Superlatives notwithstanding, some generalities apply to most shorebird species. For example, most shorebirds are highly mobile, covering extensive areas while foraging. Many are also gregarious. Those of you were with me at Heislerville yesterday, rains and everything else, and we had no shorebirds in the pool. This was Heislerville a few years ago, 60,000 semis in one place. And it really is pretty amazing. Many are gregarious outside the breeding season, massing into flocks that number from a few birds in some species to tens of thousands in others. Now, on their Arctic breeding grounds, shorebirds are widely spaced over tens of thousands of square miles. Shorebirds are also carnivorous, feeding primarily on small animals, and many species are associated with mostly wet environments. Let's see, did I put a video in here? No, I didn't. Okay. However, and again, these are Pete's words, and it inspires me. It is not merely mass numbers of birds that humans find so inspirational about this family group, but the great leaps of faith exhibited by these long-distance voyagers as they set off twice each year into the unknown, guided by instinct, but subject to the trepidations of an indifferent to hostile universe. This is Reed's speech on a good day. You don't have to worry about that. We don't need a banner anymore. Shorebirds, of course, this is the paragraph I chose to put in the front jacket because Pete wrote this, and if you've ever heard anything more amazing, let me know. Shorebirds, of course, did not spring full blown from the surf, readily equipped to vault hemispheres, pack on weight, and arrive precisely in time to exploit food riches at opposing ends of the planet. They are a product of millions of years of evolutionary push and pull. It's Darwin meets Kierkegaard, clad in feathers and divided into roughly 52 North American breeding species, each with a story to tell about the tiny birds that could, can, and continue to meet the challenges of an ever-changing planet. Okay, Pete wrote a little piece at the beginning called "The Perfect Bird," and you know, I'm afraid I'm not in slideshow mode here, and it's kind of got me a little bit upset here because that means my videos aren't going to play. But we'll see. And if I have to adjust it, you'll give me a minute. And no, there is not one single overriding trait that makes shorebirds the superior creatures that they are. Rather, the compounded array of superior traits that propel shorebirds to the apex of evolutionary development and the height of our esteem. The boldness of shorebirds invites our affection, and their synchronized flight our admiration. But their succulence has at times and in places attracted the attention of gunners and the palates of diners. This gastronomic excess has sadly contributed to the extinction of one North American shorebird, the Eskimo curlew. And that's a shot taken by Don Bleets in 1962. And Victor Emanuel, who just passed away this year from Victor Emanuel Nature Tours, was 17 years old and he saw this bird. I think there's one person alive that has seen one alive. Yeah, a species last documented in 1963 as a bird shot by sportsmen in Barbados, where shorebirds are sadly still hunted for sport. As for identification, the widespread killdeer, a medium-sized plover, ranks among the planet's most easily identified birds. Heck, it even calls out its name. It is a rare birdwatcher who does not account this vocal plover among the first 100 species on their life list. Found even on athletic fields and urban areas, this bellwether species is the bird that ushers most new birders into the ranks of shorebird devotees. Now, before I read this next piece, which is an essay Pete wrote years ago, he used to write for the New York Times in a column called "In the Natural State." Pete, do you want to share with folks what happened with that? How you saw all these birds on the bayshore and realized something needed to be done? Do you want me to just hand you the mic, or are you good with turn this way? Pull it out. All right.
You know, some of you already heard this story, but the shorebird concentrations on the Delaware Bay shore were unknown when Peter Madison wrote his seminal book. They were really only discovered in 1977 when I, as a newly minted naturalist for the New Jersey Audubon Society, set up shop at the Wetlands Institute and met a couple of local decoy carvers, Jim and Joan Siebert. And sitting at the desk one day, which was what the Bird Observatory was, a desk, a telephone, and a corkboard hanging over the desk. And voice goes, "Hey dude, Jimmy Siebert here. Would you like to see a lot of shorebirds?" And he said, "If you come for lunch, I'll show you more shorebirds than you've ever seen in your life." And, you know, naturalists the world over are opportunistic feeders. And so I said, sure, Jim. So I showed up for lunch. They had a house right on the water, Del Haven, and I looked underneath their porch, and it was just wall-to-wall shorebirds, stretching as far north as I could see with a spotting scope, including hundreds of red knot. And I mentioned it to a few people, not the least of which was a New Jersey Audubon board member, who posted a note in Eastern Bird Banding, and Brian Harrington from the Manamet Bird Observatory saw the note and gave me a call and said, do you know where you can find a lot of red knot? And I said, define a lot. And he said, 500? I said, how about 50,000? And he said, you're joking, right? And I said, no, I'm not joking. Brian had been searching for this mother lode about his whole professional life, because he knew that these birds were leaving South America without the fat to make it to the Arctic, so they had to be stopping somewhere. So Brian came, and impressed me with how astronomical this was, and then the very next year I approached New Jersey Audubon Society for funding to do aerial surveys, which were conducted on the New Jersey side by Wade Wander, myself, and David Sibley. And that's the discovery of the shorebird phenomenon.
There's too much to say about Peter's accomplishment, but that's just another little story. But here, for those of you who've enjoyed the red knots on the Bayshore, this is what's happening. And this is Pete's words. Somewhere in the skies off the Atlantic seaboard, flying at 60 miles per hour and at an altitude of 15,000 feet to reduce drag and keep from overheating, the tired birds used up the last of the fat reserves they had laid down on the beaches of northern Brazil. But the red knots have no choice but to continue onto the beaches of Delaware Bay, where on the high tides of May, they hope to find a bounty of lipid-rich horseshoe crab eggs to replenish their exhausted fuel supply and carry them on the final leg of a long journey to their breeding grounds. Some migrating shorebirds double their body weight, like this red knot did, from about 120 grams to 230 grams, with fat reserves prior to migration, but they must strike a balance between cargo and aerodynamic design. Every added gram means more weight to carry aloft, and too much ballast can compromise their drag-reducing profile. It is a delicate balance between the need for fuel and for efficiency, but with good flying conditions and a modest tailwind, the fuel carried by knots is sufficient to bring them to their refueling spot in Delaware Bay. By the time the birds start their descent, and this is them descending down by Cook's Beach, many are metabolizing muscle tissue, burning the very engines that bear them aloft in a last-ditch bid to reach the egg-rich shores where the feeding frenzy is already in progress. Much acclaim has been accorded to a single red knot. This is not the moonbird, but dubbed the moonbird because of the sum of his 21 known years of twice-annual peregrinations from the Arctic to southern South America, totaling more than 400,000 miles, far exceeding the distance from the Earth to our moon, which is 238,900 miles. But B95, as the banded bird is identified, is just one among hundreds of thousands of shorebirds of several species whose biannual migrations exceed 18,000 miles each year. My good friend Patricia Gonzalez from Rio Grande, Argentina, put the band on an adult red knot in 1996, and her last sighting of it was 2016. So do the math. It was already 2 years old. So we're talking 22, maybe more. So amazing. This photo I took in 2005, and this is, you have to be romantic sometimes in your life. This bird here has an orange band that you cannot read the numbers. I'm hoping that it's the moonbird. They recaptured it, I think, in 2008 and put a new band on it, but 10 years in salt water, both in South America and here, that band, you're not going to be able to read those numbers anymore. So that's my hope. And I'm going to the grave with that one. So here's the horseshoe crabs. I took this on my belly with a 16mm lens. This is the perspective. Horseshoe crabs can't see, they're blind. So they use the elevation of the beach to find their way up and down, but this is, if they could see, this is a mass mating frenzy going on in the early 2s. You know, we hope we see that again this year. That's a horseshoe crab egg on top of the penny. There's 2 of them. They are absolutely lipid-rich with protein, so they need to fatten up and double their weight. It takes approximately 2 weeks for them to go from 120 grams to 235 grams. That'd be like me eating very heavily for 2 weeks and going from 175 to 350 pounds, and then running 1,000 miles without stopping with no food, drink, or water or anything. This is just something we have to appreciate. So off they go. I didn't read that. I lived on that one. Okay. Now, by eating thousands of these eggs, the knots will nearly double their body weight. They said that set forth on the final leg of their journey. They're taken off here to the high Arctic breeding grounds of the Canadian archipelago. If they arrive in prime breeding condition with adequate fat reserves, the birds will court, breed, and hatch young, and then begin their return journey to South America by late July. They don't get there till the second week of June. They're already on their way back, at least the females are. It's a quick turnaround. The summers in the high Arctic, as I know, are brief, with snow returning for the winter by early to mid-August for the next 9 months. Successful breeding for this subspecies is utterly dependent on the food resources of Delaware Bay, at least this subspecies, Canutus rufa. But you can see the eggs floating around in the water. This was a good one. That's the female. And she lays the eggs, and the fertilization takes place outside the body. So that's kind of what that happens. I was blessed. Clive Mitton, my dear friend, took me down the bay a couple of years ago, and they named a red-knocked calf. So if you want to call me Kev, it's okay, but I'm very proud of that. What an honor. Yeah. Now I'm going to, hopefully this video works. Yes. This is what you see on the bay shore. You can hear the laughing, of course. Shouting. Kind of a short video, but you see the red knots, the ruddy turnstones are the harlequin ones, with the harlequin pattern on the head and the rusty backs. Most of the small ones are semi-palmated sandpipers. Sanderlings, I don't see them at all anymore. These birds are kind of having a little trouble, not a little. But, 20 years ago, the whole beach would be covered with them. Now you look for them. But anyway, you can see it's a frantic pace. The crabs are laying, the birds are feeding, they're getting along with each other. They're just totally tuned in to getting their food, doubling their body weight, the ruddy turnstones as well. Red knots are high Arctic breeders. Ruddy turnstone is also an Arctic breeder. So their final journey is about 2,000 miles. This bird is the champion of migration in the whole world. Albatrosses can migrate, but they get to sit on the water. This is a bar-tailed godwit. Bar-tailed godwit in Alaska starts in early August. They go out to the bays in western Alaska, and they feed on tiny clams and shrimp. And they just feed and feed and feed, and they put on an amazing 55% body weight. I'm not reading this text, I'm just going to do it off the top of my head. And then they start a migration like you wouldn't believe. 10,000 miles to New Zealand, non-stop, over open ocean waters. And they shrink their internal organs prior to the flight. Their kidneys, their digestive system, their liver, everything shrinks for weight saving, because it's so critical. And then they wait for a bad weather storm, which up in Alaska happens frequently, to give them a 1,000-mile tailwind, without which they would not make it to New Zealand. So you talk about tight. It makes you appreciate birds a whole lot more. And so this is bar-tailed godwit. This is me in the Arctic. That was a nice warm early June day, 15 degrees with a wind chill of -10, while you guys are having the barbecue down here at 80 degrees. I worked 4 years in the Arctic, up above Prudhoe Bay for 2 years and Kuparuk for 2 years. And when I got there, This was a nice day. The Arctic Sea was totally frozen until June 15th, roughly. Now, it is totally unfrozen by May 15th, a whole month earlier. So those people who don't believe in climate change, you know, I'm not blaming anyone for it, but let's just look at science and let's stop pretending that this isn't happening, you know, just understand that. Thank you. I just wish they would go to the Arctic like I did and see the Arctic, you know, the ice pack on, and then all of a sudden, a month, you know, 10, 20 years later, 30 years later, there's no more, and it's a full month. So polar bears are the ones that are going to suffer the most from this. It truly is the land of the midnight sun. I was there for 75 days when the sun never set. I never got tired of it. I didn't care if I ever saw the night sky again. So we're going to cover some species now that you might see around here, but I picked a handful of species that are very interesting in the shorebird world. This is black-bellied plover looking the way a breeding male really looks in the Arctic. And here's the scene which I just showed you a little bit. 178,000 miles of similar Arctic sedge, tundra, of which 88% of it is Arctic sedge. So it's not that colorful scene that you see on TV sometimes. It's just barren. And there's a female about to sit on the nest. Sophie Webb, one of our greatest artists in North America, she living in Connecticut again, her home state, back from California. Sophie drew this while we were entering research one day with a pen. And we made a t-shirt out of it. This shows the pugnacious nature and the strength of a black-bellied plover who puts fear into every predator that flies in the Arctic because they attack them from underneath. And this shows it from the, of course, from underneath, and the back of the t-shirt is attacking it from above. But it's just an amazing thing. Consequently, certain species that don't have mates that help them, like buck-breasted sandpipers, nest in the vicinity of blackbellies for their protection. Kind of like having a little protection from whoever. This is a very rare display that you'll see. Normally they don't do this. When I saw this display, I knew that the eggs, we would mark the nest, and then we would check them every week to make sure that we, note which ones were successful, which ones were taken by Arctic fox or Jaegers. This bird was doing this demonstrative display, and thankfully I had my camera because I'm going to show you a photo never photographed by anyone in the world but me. I looked at the nest and I was like, oh my goodness, this bird is pipping. I mean, these are cracking their way out of the nest. That one too, that one's cracked, and this one's cracked. All 4 eggs were hatching at the same time. This is a story I'm not going to hold back on because it's called synchronous hatching. Darwin would have been beside himself if he understood that these birds with the brain the size of a pea know, don't sit on that first egg when it's laid, or the second, or the third. Just sit on it long enough to keep them from freezing, but not long enough to start the viable 25-day incubation process before hatching. Consequently, all 4 of these eggs hatched within the same hour, even though they were laid 7 days apart. I mean, it's amazing. I read an article about a guy who went to the Arctic for 2 weeks, and he was talking about the negligent plovers who weren't sitting on the eggs, and I'm like, dude, somehow imprinted in that brain, they know if they do that, they're precocial, which means when they hatch, they're able to feed themselves immediately, and within several hours, they're up and on their feet and feeding themselves. All the mothers in the crowd, how would you like it if you had a child? Well, you have. And like 12 hours later, he says, Mom, I'm just going out to get a bite to eat. I'll be back later. But then you need to keep me warm, and that's the only purpose. Keep them warm until their feathers grow in, and down here in piping plovers, keep them cool until their feathers grow in. So this is the photo I'm talking about. This is the bill of a very small baby black-bellied plover with an egg tooth, a calcium protrusion that it uses to chop its way out of this closed cell egg, where there's no oxygen in there. But when they're out, they're fine. But this is it, and within an hour or less of getting out of the egg, that egg tooth falls off. I've only seen it once out of, let's see, 6,400 nests a year times 4. I can't do the math, 25,000 nests. But it's a very unusual situation, and you just have to be fortunate, lucky, or a biologist that happened to be there when it was happening. So, an amazing story. Ruddy turnstone. Another incredibly pugnacious bird. This bird, if a Jaeger or a big glaucous skull decides I'm going to go into that territory and eat the eggs or the babies of these shorebirds, this bird explodes off the ground, flies a foot off the ground at 48 to 50 miles an hour, and then explodes up into the belly of the Jaeger or predator. So much so that I'd be working the tundra and I'd hear this, I'd see a glaucous gull or a Jaeger coming in, and I'd hear the chatter of the black-bellied. You all know that chatter. It's like a ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And you see this bird coming in and just go, whoop, I'm going the other way. After a couple of instances with them, they know better. This is a typical shorebird nest. 4 eggs, 3 eggs if it's a second nest, the large side up, so that the heat to keep them warm or to keep them cool, the adult's body will do the best when they're... Every time they go off the nest to feed and come back, they reposition the eggs. Here's the ruddy turnstone on this nest, and the chicks had just hatched. And you know the term, I'll take you under my wing? Look what's happening. That's where it came from. They'll put all 4 chicks under their wings and under their belly and keep them warm. 2 hours later, I couldn't even find the chicks. They were gone and feeding themselves. And what a beautiful bird in flight. You know, it's incredible to see this bird. A couple of birds we see, greater yellowlegs and lesser yellowlegs are pretty much on their way. You may get a few of them now. That's a greater, that's a lesser. It's easiest when if you're a casual birder. I don't like the term beginning birder. It kind of makes you feel I'm less than others, and you're not. So a casual birder, when you see them together, it's kind of easy, especially with a female greater yellowlegs like this with the longer bill. Greater yellowlegs nest in the Canadian muskeg and on Canada as well. This is down near Homer on the Homer Spit. Lesser in kind of subarctic, where ecotones, where the tundra meets boreal forest. They will sit on the tops of trees, which you don't typically see shorebirds doing, and they'll do a 15-minute display flight, circling around their territory and then come back to the same tree. It's amazing. It's like Jekyll and Hyde with shorebirds. What you see down here is not what happens up there. And here's another great one for ID, if you want to learn how to separate them. Lesser yellowlegs is one of the most aggressive in migration towards its own. And the way a shorebird without arms to duke it out like I did when I was a Golden Gloves boxer, they have to land on the back of the other one. Very rarely is blood drawn. It's typically it's like a wrestling match. When he gets on the top like this, or she, I can't sex this one, that he just won. So basically you hit the mat and they go away, and this one slinks away and says, okay, you can feed here. This is the bird that you're seeing many of down on the Bayshore right now. I put this up because I consider it one of the most difficult birds in the world because of their diversity in size and bill shape and bill length. But these are the different plumages of semi-palmated sandpiper. This is a semi-breeding, copulating, and look at the size of the female. She put on some serious weight. But you need it. She produces an egg a day. But in 4 days, she puts out, and the total weight of the 4 eggs is more than her body weight. So it's an incredible bird. You don't see them sitting out in the open showing themselves off because fox like to see it, Jaegers. This is a typical shorebird nest over here. Here's the eye of the bird. And they make their nest, and then the carex grows over them, and they kind of crawl in like a little tunnel. In a short, this is they just hatched. For these little guys to still be in the nest is within an hour. They're not out yet, they're getting ready. But in a short 6 to 7 to 8 weeks, I shot this in Cape May on Lily Lake, they're already migrating down to South America. The juveniles without any guidance from the adults. So they'll migrate in a distance of maybe 3,000 to 4,000 miles, semis, and they end up in the same place that the adults do, which is pretty amazing. No GPS, no guidance, no maps. They have it imprinted in their brain the size of a pea. You getting impressed yet? I hope so. They're also incredibly aggressive, really aggressive. And again, this one's trying to get on top. This one won. So again, shot it on Lily Lake. The smallest shorebird in the world, least sandpiper. Many of them are gone. We had a handful of them at Heislerville yesterday, and the various plumages. I love the Arctic nest. This is a subarctic nest in Churchill, Canada. This bird does not occur in New Jersey typically in the spring. In June, you may find some non-breeders, but in the spring, if you think you have a Western, get a real good look or a photo. I put this in here. There's all 4 million Western sandpipers in the world stage in the Copper River Delta in Alaska every spring. All 4 million. So very susceptible. Thank goodness the oil spill up there didn't hit during migration. The Valdez. So all these birds, I was photographing them, they were sleeping, and all of a sudden they all came to an alert posture, and off they went in a big murmuration. Well, you know, this is what you don't want to do if you're a shorebird. Don't miss the flock. Because I'm not saying it's this one, but one made the mistake of splitting off, and this bird came in and plucked it right out of the air. That's a merlin. Well, they got to eat too. And so that was taken right after that other shot. And I can't believe I captured this. That bird was moving like the speed of light. Look at that nest. Ted Swem shot this. Let me check the time here. We're doing pretty good. Well, not as good as I'd like, but I'm going to move quicker. This would make a great jigsaw puzzle, wouldn't it? Look at that. All that magnolia lichen, where do you start? You know? Still sandpiper, we don't see as many in the spring, but we'll get a few of them. I put this in just to show you. Dale and I wrote a book, Birding by Impression, but also in the Shorebird Guide, thanks to Richard and Michael, we did a lot of comparisons of similar species. Well, so when you put in a greater yellowlegs, a lesser, and stilt sandpiper, which I used to mistake the stilt for the lesser yellowlegs all the time because they both have yellowish legs, the stilts like to feed with their tails tipping up when they feed. So it's a good behavioral feature to tell them apart. This is the bird that's going to knock your socks off because the photo coming up is the only one ever photographed, not by me, by Ted Swem, who lives in Fairbanks, Alaska. 35 years as a biologist for fish and wildlife. That's them in non-breeding plumage and a western subspecies juvenile. But you might say, whoa, what's it doing up in the tree? Well, 2 species of shorebirds in the world nest in abandoned songbird nests. And this shot right here, try Googling it. There doesn't exist another one. Ted was walking one day. Why? They nest in the boreal forests of Canada, which is vast, but not inhabited by many people, especially not by a lot of birders. So when he saw this bird go to the tree, I can't believe, this is a robin's nest, of course, because of the mud. Canada jay, which used to be gray jay, cedar waxwing, and eastern kingbird are the 4 nests they like to use, the abandoned ones. But that shot has never been photographed by anyone except Ted. And birds nesting 30 feet up in a spruce tree. It's a shorebird. Some of our birds, shorebirds are big. This is our 3rd largest, the 4th whimbrel. And this is up in Churchill, Canada. And this is the size of the eggs. They are bigger than our commercial eggs, even the extra jumbos. And so the native people look for these, obviously, nests, but they don't make a big dent in them. 178,000 square miles of summer habitat. There's a lot of places you're not going to get to. 4-wheelers for the Bain when they brought them up and gave them to the native people. Now they have an impact, destroying the habitat. You can see the bird going down onto the eggs very carefully. And this one is sitting watching me, but when I'm not around, the head will go down on the tundra and lay flat. And then from above, you won't see it. So, but it knows I'm looking at it, so it's like, I'm okay, I'm just going to sit there. In my mind, in my opinion, the most, I'm going to say romantic thing that I know about shorebirds is watching a flock of whimbrel fly overhead. It brings you back to when we were, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, maybe thousands even, where they watched these birds fly and looked up in amazement as they were vaulting hemispheres. I got a story to tell about this, but I may pass on it because my friend Fletcher Smith, I'll make it quick. Back in 2012, University of Georgia was working with avian flu down here with Reddy Turnstones, and he put satellite transmitters on whimbrel. He said, I got to know where these birds go, where they migrate. Well, I put it on 3 birds. All 3 of them went out and headed towards Europe from up above, in New Brunswick, Canada. And he's like, where are they going? They went 1,000 miles towards Europe. And then they made a right turn. And they started heading towards South America. Well, I did a little research where I knew this because I I treasure Ben Franklin. 10 geniuses in one body, in one lifetime. On his way back from England, he noted a current halfway across from Britain to Philadelphia. And he said, there's this current that turns south with the wind and the water about halfway across. It's not the Gulf Stream, might have something to do with the Coriolis current, but grain the size of a walnut. If we go offshore 1,000 miles, we're going to have a much easier time making that 3,000-mile nonstop flight to South America than fighting the bad weather along the Atlantic seaboard. Who told them that? It's just an amazing story about Wimble. Nothing gets more beautiful than American golden plover. This bird decided when I was checking the nest, the eggs were hatching, about to hatch. This male came running up to me, doing that display right at my feet. And I'm standing there looking down and saying, is that bravery or is that bravery? You know, to be like us going up to a 100-foot person and challenging them. He wanted me to chase him. And I don't call every bird a he, that is a male. Look at the chicks. My goodness, these golden, you want to pick them up and cuddle them. That's a golden plover chick. And the egg bit, when they chop it out, the adults carry all the eggs away, but we had to look for egg bits in nests that were not inhabited by birds when it was too early to say, well, did they hatch or did an Arctic fox take them? Well, 7 o'clock in the morning, we had to get down on our knees and put our heads in the nest and smell, because Arctic fox love to mark their nest after they've eaten the eggs with their urine. You don't want to put your head into a nest at 7 in the morning and have an Arctic fox just urinate in it. It was tough, but... And a short 7 to 8 weeks later, this bird is migrating down the Atlantic coastline in wet fields, eating earthworms, its favorite food during migration. Okay, only a couple of species left. We're doing good in time. My favorite bird in the world is, was, and always will be a bird that only displays on these raised areas in the high Arctic where there's an oxbow stream. They sit up here and they wave their wings around. This is a polygamous species. No, he's not a Mormon. It's a buck-breasted sandpiper. And so it will wave, he will wave that wing because the underside of that wing has a pattern on it that is unbelievably beautiful. And as he's waving it, he will attract as many females as he can to peck at his chest while he rotates like that in an area about 1 square meter. And he'll stand on his toes, he'll put his head up, and you have to be right close to him to hear it. And he makes these soft clucking sounds as he rotates like this. And it kind of reminds me of the old Bela Lugosi movies, you know, Dracula. And this shot on the right, I don't know if anyone's ever photographed this. This is not a female. Late in the season, the males, the young males, and my friend Rick Langtock got his doctoral and postdoc work on these guys. I worked with them in the Arctic. Their hormones are still going. And so, I don't know if most of you knew, male birds do not have an external sex organ. They just deposit the sperm in the vicinity. We won't go any further than that. So this is a male, I know because it's banded, and these are males. But if it was a female, there would be one male behind it. She lays prostrate on the tundra, and he copulates with it. Very unusual for shorebirds. So here he is. What happens is they have a lek about the size of this stage. And I once had 8 of them side by side. You might as well be on the Wildwood Boardwalk watching them call you in. No, come here, I'm the best. Come, you get the biggest prizes. Well, when the male next door sees 2 or 3 females going to his neighbor, he crawls along the ground, very sneaky, and causes them to explode in flight. This is a male, and these were females. And they're very upset. So they do this ritualistic flight, and I captured this with film. I had no digital back then. And they fly about 50 feet high, and then they spiral back to their respective leks and start all over again. The male has nothing to do with the incubation or the raising of the young. Basically, he goes back to his mating post and he says, more. He does that for about 3 weeks. And what a beautiful nest. I did not plant those flowers there like some photographers do. That was the actual nest of the buff-breast, and there she is. What an absolutely gorgeous, soft bird. This is a promiscuous shorebird. This is pectoral sandpiper. The males form harems. And again, the area is about twice the size of this stage. They attract as many females as they can to this harem. Once when I worked a set study plot, he weighed in at 117 grams and the female 57 grams. All of it in fat that he puts into his chest. And thanks to Ted Swem capturing this shot, because I couldn't do it with film back then, they fly around surveying their territory, making deep whooping sounds. And as they go over a female who's nesting, it gets louder. So all you hear is this whoop, 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 whoop. Very ethereal. But that's pectoral. Yeah. And this pectoral chick, what's that? I thought I heard a comment. No? Okay. This chick just hatched. Oh, it's my own echo. I'm gonna move back. This chick just hatched. You can see it has to pump blood through its wings, through its veins, and get the legs moving. So it takes a few hours, the legs wrapped around the head. That bird fit in that egg. My goodness, what a transition. 2 days later, it looks like this. A beautiful little bird. And 2 months later, or not even, this is from Jamaica Bay in New York. This is the beautiful juvenile migrating, one of the longest migrations of any shorebirds, circumpolar and then down to southern South America. This is maybe 18,000 miles a year, 9,000 each way. And it's just unbelievable. You all know our prize American oyster catcher over at Stone Harbor. They're nesting down, hopefully in the meadows, but also on Reed's Beach sometimes. 2 eggs, typical. It's one of the only species of shorebirds that feeds its young because the young cannot crack open mussels and clams and all the rest, so it has to feed the young. And they will stay with the adult if they hatch out in late May until about October. And then they might split off. So then the adult will teach the teenager. Oh, the adults do this strange aerial posturing. It's not just courtship, where one will start screaming, and then all of a sudden, 8 of them will jump up. I've seen 10, two pair from each, one pair from each nest, and fly around, leaving the babies totally exposed on the beach. The babies play dead. They walk over near seaweed, and they lay down, and therefore the laughing gulls can't see them on the beach and eat them. They'll do this for 2 to 3 minutes, and then fly back and like nothing ever happens. Okay, we're okay. They feed the teenagers, they show them how to find mole crabs. It's a soft-shelled decapod crustacean, and they're underneath the sand. As the waves retreat, you'll see little bubbles from the mole crabs, and that's how they locate them. But it teaches them how to eat them. Once they find out and can get them on their own, they're on their own. They're time to go, they're teenagers, ready to move. I like this shot because hundreds and hundreds of them, when the trade centers used to be there, I would go out to Jamaica Bay. They stage, meaning like 200 to 300 of them, right near Kennedy Airport before migrating. And, yeah, real quick. This bird in Florida, and I'm just about at the end, this bird in Florida, Dale and I were camping in our camper, poaching in a Holiday Inn parking lot at Fort Myers Beach, and it was 34 degrees that night. And I'm like, well, it's going to warm up. So I went out with shorts and a t-shirt, no socks, no shoes. It never warmed up. I walked a mile down the beach to Little Estero Lagoon and watched this oyster catcher break open fiery conch. He would grab the conch, or she, but had to wash it. So it would go down to the water's edge and wash it. Today I would be shooting my mirrorless video and I'd be knocking the socks off with it. But a ring-billed gull would be sitting watching it, and gulls are pretty smart, and it would go to meet the oyster catcher as soon as it started washing the meat, and without arms to defend itself, it uses its bill, so it plucked the food right out of the bill twice in a row, and I captured it, which is amazing with Kodachrome film. The third time, the oyster catcher went down, saw the gull, and said, that's enough, flew to another island. Killdeer, as Pete said, this was in Wildwood at an abandoned lot when there used to be property in Wildwood many years ago. And when you go near a killdeer nest and it's about to hatch, they go crazy. They do this crazy display. And one of my favorite shots in the book, this is by the Hawkwatch platform in May when no one goes down. And it had a clutch of 3 babies taking them under its belly and wing, saying, "One, this is how plovers feed. Note what it's doing with its feet. It's pattering, trying to get worms to move so that it can feel them underneath the mud. If it doesn't feel them, it's picking food off the surface, but you can see the robin-like behavior, and underneath it's just moving its feet around. So if you see a big flock of shorebirds on Bolivar Flats, and there's 30,000 of them like I've had, just look for the ones that are feeding like this. You'll get all 4 small plovers and a couple of the big ones as well. So that's the way plovers feed. Sight, walk, stop, tilt. One of the last books, I put this book out in 2007 for Schiffer Publishing. It's not just birds of Cape May. I incorporated 7 or 8 of the local photographers, Pat Sutton, and a couple of other good friends, and not just birds, but insects and everything else. But piping plover is one of our jewels. They're having a tough time with sea level rising. We're going to lose the Atlantic subspecies, I predict, by 2040. They just won't be able to survive, but this is their chicks. This is 2 days old. It's just a cotton ball on legs, you know? But look at it running by this big beach guy sitting on the beach off the meadows, and here's the little chick running down to the surf by itself. Fair game, but here's the nest up by Brigantine, right here, and you can see they nest just in the middle of an open expanse of sand. This little juvenile over at Stone Harbor Point got out in the world and didn't understand, don't go near a semi-pollinated plover adult if you want to feed in peace. It went by it, the adult grabbed one of its tertiaries, ripped it out. He shook his feathers, and that was a life lesson. And so I'm going to show you this. That's the Atlantic Ocean. That's 2 Mile Beach. Look what it's doing with its feet. It's foot pattering, trying to get a mole to move or a marine worm to move. This is March 30th, a number of years ago. But this is typical feeding behavior for piping plover. Sanderling, which I said I'm having trouble finding them on the beach anymore. That's a breeding male. Spotted sandpiper, another common bird, with a beautiful little chick up in British Columbia. And I had to put in for the last group, the phalaropes, because the females in the crowd are saying, what's going on with these promiscuous and polygamous birds? The phalaropes, the 3 species in the world, the female is the most beautiful in plumage. She's the dominant one in the pair bond. She decides what's going on, who I'm going to choose. She chooses him. When she lays the last egg, she's off. It's up to him to do the brooding, raising the chicks, incubation, brooding, and then she goes off and looks for another male and does it again, and maybe 3 times. So there is a little justice. And this is Wilson's phalarope, and I'm going to show you, you may get a little dizzy. So if you're prone to dizziness, be careful on this next video. They like to spin in the water. And this was before mirrorless. I had a hard time shooting this looking at the back screen, and I'm getting a little dizzy. They're trying to create a vortex, which brings the invertebrates into that tornado vortex in the water up to the surface, so they can pick it off. And this is the terrestrial phalarope. This is Wilson's. Redneck and red are out in the ocean. Obviously they don't do this, but you dizzy yet? Yeah, we'll move on. When they get on land, this was in Corpus Christi 2 weeks ago, strong wind. There are some crazy looking birds. This is the terrestrial phalarope. You see the female, the brightest one here. The male is the one leading the way, and a non-breeding one in the back. The other birds do not like this bird feeding near it. They get nervous because the bird is a nervous bird. But it's pretty cool to see a group of them feeding on it. You see the way they're bent over, and they're like reddish egrets. They don't know which way to go, and that's pretty cool. Okay, We got in 50 minutes? Yeah, so I'm going to end this program. This is a commemoration of birds. You see them doing it. They do it to confuse peregrine falcons and merlins, because if they fly in a group like this, these are Dunlin, they fly in a group and they don't separate. The raptor has a real hard time picking one off, and they kind of get confused and a little mesmerized by the movement, like we do. This is a shot I like. This is the New World Trade Center, and this is, like I told you, a lot of oyster catchers would gather there. But I think we're moving on to the ending. Some of you will recognize this song, but since you've looked at shorebirds the whole show, I'm going to show you some of my favorite photos put to music. So you got 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and I hope this puts you in a mood to make the rest of your evening happy and joyful. After this, it worked. John, can we go up a little?
See free.
Judy Garland, thank you, Louis Armstrong, and thank you folks for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bob Smelter, Suzanne. We need more love like this in the world. Thanks again, folks. Pete and I will be out in the lobby signing some books. We're happy. I'm honored anytime someone asks me to take a picture with them or to sign a book. What greater honor in the world to have someone think that you're that special. So, again, thanks again, folks.
Well, I guess you can see that the reason that not a photo-driven bird book has been published in the last half century that Kevin's not included in it.
Doesn't put you in a good mood. I know, I've done that. I see it, you're still sitting in your chairs. It's like, no, I don't want this mood to end. My father, back in the 50s when I grew up, he was a big fan of Louis Armstrong, who totally helped bridge the gap between blacks and whites. And Louis was just so special. And then along comes Israel, and Judy Garland wrote that portion, and along comes Louis, puts the combination together, and then Israel from Hawaii does that version with the ukulele, and my goodness, a lot of people use that for a wedding song and it all works, but again, you can get up now. Thanks. All right, let's give another round of applause for
Just a couple minutes, and we'll sign some books.